Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. І хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another stream. And right now, we're seeing a very big situation breaking out at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. Currently, it's on fire at a cooling tower, which is very serious indeed. And it has Zelensky and the Ukrainians, and also other people very worried indeed. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering a breaking news development. This is not a normal nightly stream, and this is also not our Sunday night fundraiser as well. This stream is serving as an emergency broadcast from this channel, speaking of the rapidly developing situation currently seen at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, and a few periphery situations as well happening within Moscow and the Middle East at this moment. We will be running a normal stream tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, which will serve as our Sunday night fundraiser, and we will be covering the Kursk offensive and other frontline actions by Ukrainian armed forces during that stream. We will not be covering those developments during this one. We will specifically be talking about only the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, the ongoing drone attack on the outskirts of Kursk, which is happening at this very moment, and also the news that Iran will start to attack Israel most likely by the 15th of August that is starting to circulate heavily amongst Israeli governmental sources and is being published as nearly a fact at this point that an attack will be inevitable within that area. Those are going to be the three main things that we are covering, and I also want to make sure to remind everyone there is going to be another stream running tonight. We are not going to be on air for incredibly long right now. We're going to be on air for probably about another hour and 40 minutes beyond this very point I'm talking right now, because then I have to end this stream and prepare for the next stream, which will then be coming about an hour or two after the end of this one. So with that, we are now going to be moving on into our breaking news that we are getting as we are live on air right now, as the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant's cooling tower number 1 has caught on fire at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. The Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant has been under occupation of Russian Federation forces since the early part of 2022, and there have been multiple times that the security and the safety of the nuclear power plant and its employees have been brought into question by Ukrainian and global authorities, and the Russian Federation has promptly ignored most of those warnings. At this moment, Ukraine is currently conducting a major offensive through the Kursk Oblast. The picture that is starting to unfold today, which we will describe in the stream happening at 10 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, is looking very grim, as Russian forces are surrendering in the hundreds today, and we are seeing that the Russians are abandoning their positions, large amounts of their equipment is being destroyed, and it appears that the Ukrainian offensive is still rapidly pile-driving directly towards the city of Kursk, as the Russians hastily try to create defensive positions in between the Kursk nuclear power plant and the city of Kursk as well. This seems to be correlating exactly to the situation in the incident that we're seeing down here. And I want to make it very clear before we even get into this that the exact origin of the fire is unknown at this moment. We actually have three completely different stories that are being published by three different groups. We have one story that's being issued by the Russians, we have another story that is being issued by the Ukrainians, and then we have a completely third different story that is being issued by the IAEA, which is the International Atomic Energy Association. We have three completely separate stories, and we're not going to be airing one or the other as raw fact at this moment on this channel, as we do not have enough proof or enough evidence to be able to confirm nor deny any one of these three existing stories and theories at this very moment. But we will be showing y'all what we have in video and picture evidence so far that is showing that there is a very concerning situation unfolding in the area, and it is this right here. This is a picture from the area of Nikopol at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, and we can see that one of the cooling towers, this had literally been taken as a picture right when the fire started. We can see that there is a massive plume of thick black smoke that is coming from one of the cooling towers at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, and it appears that most of the smoke is starting to drift southwards and towards the city of Melitopol inside of Russian-occupied territory, at least during the time this picture was taken. This is a very serious development, as the cooling tower is actually crucially important even when the reactors are shut down, to making sure that the water does not overheat and that there isn't any sort of a steam explosion at the nuclear power plant. There are many different ways, however, that the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant has for cooling. They have the cooling pond, they have the cooling towers, and not only that, I believe they also have these smaller cooling ponds down here as well, which are also used to try and cool off the water that is being used inside of these reactors. The one would be a little misinformed to say that the situation is completely under control, especially if we were to understand that this is some sort of fire that is actually damaging or possibly going to end up destroying one of these cooling towers. These cooling towers, and I cannot state this enough, are used even when the reactors are shut down. The reactors, even when shut down, are still heating up water to a degree, and that water has to be circulated through the system still to make sure that the reactors don't end up overheating and that the steam inside of the boilers does not end up exploding. And so for that reason, a fire happening inside of one of these cooling towers may end up being a serious ordeal in the long run and could end up posing a great amount of damage to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the safety of the entire surrounding area if this power plant was to get into any more of a precarious position. We also were able to get another video showing the fire at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in real time. This once again appears to have been filmed somewhere from the direction of Nikopol across the area and into the direction of the cooling towers. And we can see right here the fire burning at the bottom. We can clearly and visibly see the fire at the bottom of the cooling tower, and then the smoke that is rising up through the cooling tower and then off southwards towards Melitopol.
You know, it's kind of interesting. That fire appears to be actually within the cooling tower, from what I can tell from here, unless I'm seeing that wrong. It looks like it's actually from within the tower itself, which is intriguing that that's the case. And also, it's a very large fire. That's not small whatsoever. If this is this far away, this camera is, it's seeing it on camera popping up that large. That, to me, looks like a very widespread fire.
It appears to be encompassing the entire base of the cooling tower, and something that I want to point out for everyone is that the cooling tower does have intricate components inside of it that are fragile enough that they could be damaged or completely destroyed from the heat of a fire like this. The cooling tower operates as a way for ventilation or a large amount of air to be able to air cool the water that is passing through this cooling tower. And so for it to be able to function, it requires somewhat thinner membranes for the water to pass over, so that way it's ventilated and cooled from both sides. Cooling towers, in a sense, for a lot of our mechanics here, largely operate like a huge radiator. They are there, their entire job is to try and make sure to let air pass around and over the water so that way it can end up being cooled, and then the water is deposited back into the cooling pond, and then it's recirculated back through the boiling vessels, which are the nuclear reactors in the plant, and then that hot water is then sent all the way back out to the area around the cooling tower, where the water is then air cooled, and then once it reaches room temperature or somewhere around that, it is then deposited back into the cooling pond, and the cycle continues. This fire appears to be so severe and burning so heavily, it may have completely destroyed the internal the radiating system or the radiator system that the cooling tower works off of, and that means at this moment the only other operational cooling tower in this area is directly alongside it and to the left. We believe that is cooling tower number 2, if we were to understand that correctly, or at least understand the numbering convention correctly in this area. We were also able to get another video of the fire from another angle right here. This is actually a duplicate, sorry everyone, but once again showing us the absolute inferno that is burning at the bottom of the cooling tower, and also the smoke that is billowing out the top.
You know, one good piece of news, though, no matter how bad this really looks, and it is a very bad situation, this is actually detached from the reactors themselves. It's actually removed from it by, it looks like about maybe 500 to 1,000 feet away from the reactor buildings themselves. So while this does look very, very bad, and it is indeed serious because that could cause the cooling tower to potentially collapse or be permanently damaged, it is far away from the reactors. So unless the fire is able to somehow spread and then go all the way back to the reactors, then that would be the only scenario that we would see, like, for example, a meltdown or something serious like that happen if that was the case. But right now, we're not really sure what kind of firefighting measures are being taken by the Russians to put it out. So that's the big unknown at the moment.
We've also been hearing conflicting stories, much like Enforcer Matt was talking about the efficacy of the local fire brigades. We have heard that apparently they're having incredibly difficult times trying to quell this fire and stop it. And so from what we understand, the tower may end up burning until it collapses, at least from what we may know. But we were able to get one more picture of the fire right here. This is once again from an area around Nikopol, and this one really gives an idea of how bad the fire is, because you can see that it is literally burning from one end of the base of the cooling tower to the other. It is enveloping the entire bottom of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. So this does appear to be an incredibly serious situation, at least for the cooling towers, and this could start to pose some later issues for operations of the ZMPP well on into the future. Like many are saying, the power plant is shut down at the moment. However, that does not mean that that water is not passing through the reactors. Water always has to pass through the reactors, unless if they are completely deactivated and the nuclear fuel has been removed, which takes an incredibly long process to get to that point. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant just had its last reactors, I believe, completely denuclearized, if you want to call it that, or had their nuclear fuel removed just a few years before the war began. I believe it was like 2019 or 2020 that the last reactor had its fuel removed. It takes an incredibly long time for a power plant, once activated, to be able to get to a point where the fuel can be removed and it doesn't require a amount of water passing through the reactors to make sure that it doesn't end up overheating and then exploding, because that is something that these reactors can end up doing if they do not have enough cold water. The other situation here is that this is not an accurate picture of what this area looks like right now. The Dnipro River's reservoir in this area north of the town, and let me move down here to get you all that town, of Novokakhovka, the Novokakhovka Reservoir, has been empty for an incredibly long time now because of the dam explosion further downriver. Because of that, the water that the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant is working off of is entirely within the cooling pond, and they really have no easy way to start filtering out that water and bringing in new room temperature or cold water, if you want to call it that, once this water begins to heat up in the cooling pond, because there's really no other water in the river to pull from at this point, because it's pretty much been depleted for about a year and a half at this point. And so going off of that, if the reactors continue to have their water cycled through, and these reactors slowly heat up the water over time to where it's pretty much already slightly steaming, even in the cooling pond, this is going to start to end up creating a major and dangerous situation, and especially with the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant not being able to work off of one of its cooling towers, this could start to turn into a pretty tough situation overall, and we could see that the power plant eventually runs into a meltdown-like situation, because the reactors are pretty much running out of control because there's no cool water to bring in as a possible form of control, at least for the steam process that the reactors work off of. But a lot of people have been talking about who started the fire, and of course Billy Joel says that we didn't start the fire, but who did? And a lot of people have been trying to pin it down on someone, and there's only two parties that could be responsible for this fire: the Ukrainians or the Russians. And which side would have ended up creating this fire? We are hearing, and we'll get into the stories here in a second, three entirely different stories at the moment about where this fire started, who started it, and why. But still, the story is so ambiguous at this moment, considering that three sources have three entirely different stories. We do not know who actually started the fire. So, Matthew, what are people actually thinking about that? Are people thinking that the Russians started the fire? Do they think that the Russians didn't start the fire? Are they thinking that the world's been burning, so, like the world's been turning and the Earth's been burning? What do they think? And what are you thinking as well?
So it looks like 64% of the audience said yes, Russia did start the fire, while 20% said I need more intel on this, and 5% said no, the fire is not by Russia. And on this one right here, currently we're getting multiple conflicting stories. Right now it seems that the Ukrainians are saying that there's tires burning at the base of the cooling tower itself, which caused this massive fire to break out, and that it was an intentional fire starting by the Russians. And we're hearing from the Russian side, they're saying that a Ukrainian drone came in and struck the area, causing the fire instead. So we have two different versions of the story right here, and we really don't know which one to believe. I would have to lean toward the Ukrainian side because the Russians lie like dogs, so I'd have to believe that they're probably lying once again, and that maybe the Russians did intentionally start this fire. So I would be with the 64%. And also, one other thing you have to remember as well. Right now, the Ukrainians are very close to being able to take the Kursk nuclear power plant inside of mainland Russia, and this could be Russia's way of sending a warning to the Ukrainians that they do have their power plant under control over here in occupied Ukraine, and they could try to blow it up if they decide to take the Kursk plant inside of mainland Russia. So that is a possibility as well. So right now, it's looking a little bit risky for both sides. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe the Russians were the ones who started this fire. And then actually, while I answered this question that we've asked all of y'all, I think I should tell you all the three different stories that we're hearing at the moment. So the first story that was issued today was from the Ukrainians. They saw the fire from the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant in the cooling tower, and the Ukrainians said, oh, from our observations and from our reconnaissance, it appears that it's some sort of a tire-based fire where they've piled up a large amount of tires at the bottom of the cooling tower, and then they set them all on fire. And so that's the Ukrainian story that's come out at the moment, is that the Russians made some sort of a tire fire in the cooling tower, and that's why we are seeing what we're seeing right now. The other story is coming from the Russians, and the Russians are claiming that the Ukrainians struck the cooling tower with artillery, and now the cooling tower somehow is just burning into blazes at this point, and that's the story that the Russians are putting out. The IAEA then put out a third story, a completely different one from the Russians and the Ukrainians, and they said, our agents in the area that are at the power plant, they heard explosions at the cooling tower, and then they saw the fire. And they didn't say that it was the Russians who did it. They didn't say that it was the Ukrainians who did it. They're just stating that there was some kind of explosions. So out of the three stories that we have right now, two of them are saying that there was some kind of an explosion. The Russians are saying that it was artillery fire exploding at the cooling tower that caused the fire, and the IAEA is saying that explosions in general caused the fire. The Ukrainians are the only one out of the three that are saying that it's some sort of a tire-based fire, and the Russians just ended up putting a load of tires in there, dousing them in lighter fluid, and then setting them on fire. And so going out of that, based off of the independent third-party statement and the Russian statement, there seems to be some credence to the idea that an explosion happened around the area of the cooling tower, and that's what started the actual fire. So I'm kind of doubting the Ukrainian tire fire story at the moment. I'm more so leaning in the direction of the IAEA, and I would believe that the plausible theory maybe is that the Russians ended up having something accidentally explode at the cooling tower, and this is what started the fire. The Russians, of course, not wanting to blame it on themselves, blame it on the Ukrainians instead, to try and have some sort of plausible deniability and make it look like the Ukrainians are conducting some sort of an aggressive action near a nuclear power plant. Although in the past, we have gotten very clear evidence that the Russians have conducted a myriad of very wild actions at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant that have endangered the safety of the plant and possibly created a situation that would end up in a nuclear meltdown. So going off of that, I would have to say the Russians certainly started the fire. It's just that I don't believe it's a tire fire. I believe it's most likely some sort of another kind of an explosion, and the explosion ended up creating the fire that we're seeing right now, which is probably burning the inside out of the cooling tower number 1, that's on fire at the moment. That would be my...
I will say that the tire fire story is a little bit odd. I'm not saying the Ukrainians are making that up, but for that to be a tire fire, they would have to bring in so many tires. I'm not even sure where they would get all those tires from to be able to cause one this large. That fire is being seen from, it looks like, almost, I can't tell if it's a full mile away or not, but wherever that security camera footage was from, it's a pretty good distance away. And the fact that's being seen that far away and that big of a blaze, that looks to me like a much larger fire than tires simply being burning. So, you know, that fire being that big has the potential to spread as well. It could spread back to the reactors. I'm not sure how probable that really is, but it is a possibility, and that would be the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I would have to say it certainly would be a worst case scenario, but that's currently all of the information that we're getting at the moment. And we did get to hear, I'm going to show you all this because we did repost this on Twitter, that the IAEA, this is their direct statement that they put out on Twitter. IAEA experts witnessed strong dark smoke coming from ZMPP's northern area following multiple explosions heard in the evening. The team was told by ZMPP of an alleged drone attack today on one of the cooling towers located at the site. No impact has been reported for nuclear safety, but nevertheless, this is the important thing to get. They were told by the Russians, of course, their bullshit story that it was an attack by the Ukrainians, but the IAEA had witnesses that heard the sound of explosions near the cooling tower, and so they didn't see anything at the cooling tower, they just heard the sounds of the explosions. So I'm guessing that they were probably on the eastern side of the facility where the view is obstructed of the cooling towers themselves and their base, and so all they heard were explosions. These could have been explosions conducted by the Russians for all we know, and then they told the IAEA that it was actually a Ukrainian drone attack later on, so that way they could deny any involvement in creating the fire at the cooling tower. So there we largely have at least our third-party story, and then the other stories from the Russians and the Ukrainians, they're all over Twitter, and we put them on our Twitter as well. So if you want to see what the other two sides of the story are saying, make sure to go to our Twitter. The link is in the description below, and we have all of the other stories there. But I wanted to show the IAEA story because their story seems to be showing at least a third-party perspective that is giving us an idea that it may have actually been the Russians causing explosions at the cooling tower over anything else. But anyways, with that, that is largely our emergency update right now on the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. Before I move us on into Moscow, because there's a major event happening there in the form of a Ukrainian drone attack on the city, I want to make sure to remind everyone that this is not, once again, the stream for today. There is going to be a second stream running later tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and that is when we're going to be covering all of the major news from the Kursk Oblast. And right now, even at this moment, with all of the news collection that I've done a lot earlier in the day, there is a lot going on up there. In fact, it appears that the Russian brigades that have been brought into the area are already beginning to collapse and buckle under the weight of the Ukrainian offensive themselves. It looks like there may be no hope left for the Russian defense of the city of Kursk, even right now. But we will be getting into that in greater detail tonight and showing a lot of our picture and video evidence to back that up. But moving on out of this area and on up into Moscow, we were able to see that Putin is not looking that happy. With the fire going on at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant, with the Kursk invasion looking like there's really no way of stopping it at this point, we got this picture today from a press briefing that he was in. And boy, is that rough.
That's the look of someone right there that knows that things are not going well, and he's getting very desperate. He's getting dangerous. He's like an animal backed into a corner at this point, and he's going to lash out eventually. The question is, which event is he going to lash out at? Will it be the nuclear power plant? Will it be striking key, for example, their government buildings? Which is it going to be? Because this guy is looking like he is right on the edge of losing it.
He looks like he's about to snap, and also, Matt, isn't he kind of looking a little bit like Lavrov now? Like, why the long face? You know, something like that. Like, kind of looking like...
He is, man. He's looking like Mr. Horseman himself.
Man, I'm telling you, man, why the long face? But anyways, moving on from that picture, it's now time for us to actually get on into the real breaking news from Moscow, because Moscow is being attacked in rare form by drones, and we got to see the clips. Here they are. Listen to that air defense. It's just rifle fire. Pretty nice to hear. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see more anti-air action overhead. You see it out there in the distance, so you don't really get to hear it much. You just kind of see it in this clip. But moving on from that and into our next clip,
Are they trying to use AKs for air defense again?
yes, they are doing the AK air defense kind of routine again.
Those poor suckers, they just don't have anything to defend their cities anymore.
Man, I'm telling you, it's rough.
Охереть. Охренеть.
Got some ASMR going on in the background during this attack.
Delicious. Taco.
He did something like that. It's like, what the hell?
Да он походу.
This video would have been a lot better without the narration, both on my end and her end, to be
Да, кто-то
entirely honest.
разговаривал, зря он тут.
But anyways, that's the end of that clip. And then coming full circle, we then got to see the area where this drone attack was actually happening, which means that the drones actually flew all the way around Moscow and to its eastern side, because this area right up here, right in this town of Shilyukovo, which is just east of Moscow, it's within the metropolitan area. This is the area where the air defense fire was coming from. So it's very interesting once again to see that the Russians are in a pretty damn rough spot. I mean, they're in a pretty bad one. It looks like the air defense, even around Moscow, isn't doing too well these days. And not only that, they had nothing but small arms fire coming from this area, once again showing us that they don't have larger air defense systems around Moscow in a large ring. More so, any air defense that they may have is pretty much focused on the southwestern side of the city, facing towards Ukraine, where they believe a large amount of these drones would be coming from. We don't have enough information at the moment to be able to confirm any sort of damage in this area of Moscow. This literally was happening right when I was putting together the breaking news segment for right now, so that way we could come live on air and tell y'all what was happening at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. But I did want to keep y'all informed, at least right now, there is an ongoing drone attack in Moscow, and there may be possible damage coming around, maybe by the time we run our Long War stream tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, or we might get some information and updates on that I can talk about on Monday during the short war video. But moving on from that and down out of the area of Ukraine and Russia and into the Middle East, we also did get some additional updates down here, which was a little bit interesting. This area has been very quiet lately, and we've pretty much given up on even trying to predict when the attacks would occur within this region, because largely it's almost unpredictable and it's really hard to tell. They will say that an attack will happen, but it can happen months after they state the attack will happen. But it does seem as though the Israelis are once again getting a little bit panicked, and they're starting to believe that the Iranian attack is going to be coming soon. We've gotten a statement from the Iranian government today, well, at least a statement on Twitter about the actions of the Iranian government. And according to Jason Brodsky on Twitter, a new Israeli intelligence assessment that Iran's regime will launch a direct attack on Israel, that it will be harsher than last time, and Hamas has reportedly refused to attend the August 15th ceasefire talks, seem to all be pointing towards an escalation this week. If below is true that the national news reports about Sinwar's hardened negotiation stance seems to have aged well. So going off of this statement, which I butchered reading it, it seems as though it is once again devolving. It looks like the peace talks that began like a day ago have already fallen apart again, and it looks like the Iranians are once again hell-bent, along with their proxies, on conducting an attack against Israel. And it seems to be that, at least in the area of Israel, the Israeli government is once again viewing the situation as pretty grave. And we have heard that the Israeli Defense Forces have issued a new order tonight, ordering all soldiers who are in these countries, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and a couple of others, even if they're on vacation, they must return immediately to Israel. And so it does seem as though they were calling anyone who's overseas at the moment for military service, and it looks as though everyone is getting ready for the fight to finally happen in the Middle East. We're not entirely sure.
Do you think... Real quick, do you think that maybe Iran's been waiting for the Olympics to come to an end? Because they've been planning this thing and also preparing for it for quite some time, but it seems like they're waiting right till the end of the Olympics to really start ramping it back up once again. And I'd heard some reports that France had been putting really big pressure on Hezbollah, Hamas, and all the proxies to hold off until their Olympics were over and then go for the attack if they're going to do it. So I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but it does seem to line up in the time frame.
It kind of does seem to be lining up, because I think the Olympics are rounding out soon, if I'm correct, Matthew. Am I right on assuming that?
I believe so. I'll be honest, I haven't watched them at all this year because I kind of thought they kind of sucked, to be honest, but I think they might be coming to an end.
When does the Olympics end? We got, we know a lot on this channel, but that eludes us. So apparently, it ends today. That's
why.
That's why, yeah. So it seems as though that may be the case, that they were waiting for the Olympics to end and then the attack will start. Maybe that's the case. But it does look as though the situation is once again rising in terms of tensions in the area, and it seems like everyone is just waiting at this point for the upcoming attack. And so with that...
Also, real quick, breaking news as well. It appears there's sirens going off right now at the confrontation line in Israel. It looks like a lot of sirens are going off right now. So we're just getting this right as we speak, like literally a couple of seconds ago. I'm not sure how big of an attack this is, or if this is being conducted by the proxies or who this is. But currently there are sirens going off as we speak. And we just mentioned right now that it appears Iran is ramping up to attack Israel in maybe the next 48 hours or maybe sometime like that. So we'll have to keep an eye on this and see, because we could be looking at an early attack right now.
And it sounds like we may be. And so just to reiterate what Matthew said, there are sirens going off right now at the confrontation line, which is the Lebanese-Israeli border in the north of the country of Israel. And so we are waiting to see at the moment if there's going to be any kind of an overwhelming attack conducted by Hezbollah. If there is an overwhelming attack conducted by Hezbollah, we will assume that Iranian missiles and drones will most likely be not that far along to follow, meaning probably within hours. But still, this is once again showing us that the area is devolving into a warlike state again, and that little bit of a lull that we saw probably was just so that way the Olympics would end and then everyone would get back to strangling each other inside the Middle East. So we're going to be waiting to see if everyone's going to start strangling each other again down here. If they do, we will run a emergency broadcast like we have done today for the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant, but we have a feeling that this probably will not be happening until a few days later, at least in my opinion. So we'll be waiting to see. If I'm wrong, that's fine. We will still be live on air covering it as soon as it happens, no matter if it's literally tomorrow or days from now. But it does sound as though things are getting a little bit heated in this area. But moving on from that and out of the Middle East and back up into the area of Ukraine, there is a lot of people talking about the Ukrainian actions inside of Kursk. And while we're not going to be covering this in greater detail at the moment, at least right now, there is a lot of talk about what the Ukrainians are doing in Kursk, because a lot of people believe that what's happening at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant is directly correlated to what's happening in Kursk. And the Russians are trying to send some sort of a message to the Ukrainians that they better watch out and sleep with one eye open at this point, because they keep advancing in Kursk and doing as well as they are. And they have done wildly well today. And I'm saying that not as a thing to just say the Ukrainians are doing well. We have gotten more videos of Russians being taken prisoner today in Kursk than any other day of the offensive so far. It is so bad. The Ukrainians are having to crowd these guys into buildings where they're so densely packed inside these buildings. It's almost like packing sardines in, because they have no way to take care of this many prisoners. They didn't even think that they would have to process this many of them, much less hold as many of them until they could be processed. And so the Ukrainians at this moment are actually being overwhelmed by the success of the offensive, and they are hardly even able to deal with the influx of prisoners that they're getting. Not only that, some of the Russian armor brigades that have moved into the area have already been proven to have taken significant losses, and not only that, have been overwhelmed so greatly in some areas. Most of their tanks have been abandoned, and the Ukrainians are actually capturing them and turning them around to put into Ukrainian military service against the Russians in Kursk. There's a lot going on in this area, and we're not going to be showing all the video and picture evidence yet. That's still going to be saved for later tonight during the Sunday night fundraiser, but still, a lot of people are talking about, should Ukraine expedite the capturing of the Kursk nuclear power plant to get leverage over the Russians? Kind of a tit for tat sort of a thing. If something happens to the ZMPP, something happens to the Kursk nuclear power plant. Funnily enough, either way this went, if the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant got blown up, or if the Kursk nuclear power plant got blown up, the radiation all goes to Moscow. I'm not kidding. Like, all the prevailing winds in the area takes all the radiation that would happen from either of these incidents and just floods it straight up to Moscow. So Putin would actually, no joke, be choking on radioactive air within the next day if one of these nuclear power plants ended up melting down and exploding. That's most likely how it would go. But still, a lot of people have been weighing in their opinions on what Ukraine should do with the Kursk nuclear power plant, which we can see right here. And Matthew, what are people thinking? Are people thinking that the Ukrainians should take it quickly to try and get leverage over Putin? Or do they think that the Ukrainians should hesitate or not even take it at all and maybe just work around it?
So it looks like a whopping 70% of the audience said yes, Ukraine should take it very quick to get leverage, while 10% said no, Ukraine should hesitate out of caution, and 9% said it really does not matter. And in my opinion, I would say that the two events here are connected. The fire breaking out of the Zaporizhzhia plant is, in my opinion, definitely connected to the potential taking of the Kursk nuclear power plant in the Kursk region of Russia. So I would say personally that Ukraine should really expedite this and make this their top priority to take that plant immediately, because then they can level the playing field. And if Russia's going to do something stupid with the Zaporizhzhia plant, then Ukraine can threaten to do the same thing to the Kursk plant. I know that doesn't sound good to start delving into basically nuclear terrorism, but right now, basically, Ukraine has two options here. They can either let Russia have the leverage, and Russia might end up blowing the plant up over there in Zaporizhzhia if they get too extreme, or Ukraine could take it and threaten to do the same thing, which would put them on a level playing field. So, in my opinion, I'm definitely with the 70%, and hopefully Ukraine is very close to being able to take that plant, because that is of utmost importance. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, first off, this channel is not promoting any form of nuclear terrorism. I just want to make that very clear. It's kind of like a statement thing. But one thing I will say is that Ukraine does have to make sure that all of its cards are in line, so that way if the Russians do anything, there is an equal form of retaliation. It's kind of like the idea of mutually assured destruction. If the Russians end up trying to blow up the Ukraine's nuclear power plant, Ukraine is going to blow up Russia's nuclear power plant. And the fear of one doing the other over, and then the response from that, will make sure that neither of them actually blow up either nuclear power plant. So in my actual opinion, I would have to say that the Ukrainians should take the power plant, so that way there is a actual physical leverage to be had over the Russians. That radioactive fallout, without a doubt, will flood directly up into Moscow. We know that the prevailing winds move in that area, and so this is, without a doubt, a major threat to the Russian Federation if the Ukrainians take that power plant. And of course, the Ukrainians wouldn't blow it up. But the Russians are not going to blow up the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant anymore because of the implication. And so going off of that, I would have to say that they'd 100% be within their right to be able to take the power plant and then hold it for as long as they could, which probably would be indefinitely, considering how this offensive is going at the moment. And so with that,
Oh, and also, by the way, I just want to clarify real quick to make sure I said this properly. I do not promote nuclear terrorism of any sort either. I simply said the Ukrainians can take that plant in Kursk to at least have the threat to basically level the playing field to make sure that Zaporizhzhia doesn't get blown up by the crazy Russians. So just to make that clear, I think that came off bad when I worded it the first time. Just to make that perfectly clear, Ukraine should never try to blow up these plants, but at least it would put them on a level playing field.
Yeah, it actually came off a little bit odd at the first time. I think that's why I had to make a point of saying something about it. I was like, I don't like, I know what you were getting at, but I was like, some people are of course going to try and play a word game with that, and I was like, we need to beat them to the punch on that one. But still, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, at least in our opinions on what the Ukrainian armed forces should do. And at the moment, it looks like they're actually going to be getting really close to taking Kurchatov and the power plant here within the very near future. But still, with that, we are kind of moving on at this point, crazily enough, and this is quite bizarre. I'm going to admit there has already been 100,000 people who have watched this stream right now, which it's only been going on for about 48 minutes. It's pretty wild. It's pretty bizarre. So you know what? I just got to say this really quickly. I thank every single one of y'all so much for watching so far. Y'all are joining us on a very wild bit of news so far on a kind of a wild day, and many of y'all may be joining us for the first time. I actually think a lot of y'all probably are. If y'all are, let me explain a few things really quickly. We do not run this stream at this time of day every day. We actually run a live stream far later in the night, around 10 p.m. Eastern time, which is about, let's see, about 3 hours from now. About 3 hours from now, that's when we normally run our stream. That's when it starts. This is a very special stream tonight because we are running an emergency broadcast on the situation happening at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant. But if you like the kind of analysis that we're doing right now, and you think it's really top-notch stuff, and you would like to hear more of this, you can count on us to be here 6 days a week. Today's actually a really special day as well because the stream that's being run tonight is the Sunday night fundraiser. We run a fundraiser for a nonprofit operating somewhere in the world supporting Western interests every single Sunday. Usually that's a nonprofit that helps out in Ukraine, and tonight that is going to be the case again. So if you want to join us for tonight's stream, we're going to be talking about the Kursk offensive in that stream and all of the pictures and video evidence that we were able to find today from that area, along with everything else. So make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the like button. Loads of y'all already have, like almost 3,500 of y'all have from what I can tell. So make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to let us know what you think of the stream. If you enjoy it, we would love to know. And if you want to see anything else, if you want to see any specific news that we're not bringing up right now, we would love to be able to cover that as well. Usually we're the first in the game to everything, like we actually are, like either on Twitter or on video or on stream. We're usually the first ones to a story. But if y'all want to hear more about a story and we're not really covering it much, let us know, because we might be able to try and fit that in somehow, some way, if we can get video and picture evidence for it. But at this point, we're going to be taking a little bit of a breather because I have to get off stream. I have to get off of this stream without a doubt in about 1 hour's time at a minimum, so that way I can start working on tonight's stream. We've gotten a good amount of the work done so far, but there's still a lot more to be done. I have to make sure to research some of the specific information that we were able to get today, because we are now able to discern a lot better now what kind of armed forces are in the Kursk Oblast. We're getting a lot of information today that's making that very clear, and so we're getting a much better view of what this offensive is actually shaping up to be. We also have a whole bunch of pictures and videos that we have not been able to include so far yet, that I also have to be able to make sure to add in before that stream runs tonight. And then I also have to pick the nonprofit, and I have to make a new thumbnail and a title for tonight's stream. All of that takes a pretty good bit of time, and because of this breaking news stream, I'm really going to have to rush all of that and try and make sure that I can get it done in really less than an hour or so, because after about an hour, the last hour leading up to that stream at 10 p.m. Eastern time, I spend putting together everything in OBS and making sure that it's all ready to go. So at this moment, we're going to start moving our stream on into a question segment, so that way we can get to talk to all of y'all. A lot of y'all have thrown in questions in the live chat. Some of y'all have thrown in super chats. And also, one more thing, I want to make this very clear. This stream is not the Sunday night fundraiser. We are not running a fundraiser for a nonprofit on this stream. We are running it on the stream that is coming in about an hour or two. So if you throw in a super chat on the stream, do not think it's going to a nonprofit. That is going to support this channel. You can request when you throw in a super chat that we throw it into a fundraiser, but we can't tell everyone to do that, because the thing is that YouTube takes 30% of the money y'all send in. So if you send in a $10 super chat, we only get $7 of that, or even less, because they deduct transfer fees and everything as well. So then we have to put $10 of our money into that fundraiser, but we only got about $6.50 possibly from y'all. So if people threw in thousands of dollars in super chats and everyone wanted us to throw that into the fundraiser, we would start going broke pretty quickly. So if you want to support our fundraiser that we're going to be running tonight, make sure to show up for that stream later. If you're wanting to support this channel and help it to keep on running, you can throw in a super chat here and help to do so, but no one has to. The stream is completely free to watch. It's ad-free, sponsor-free, and no one has to throw in a single dime for this channel to keep on running. We do this as a living, though, so people do have to support the channel somehow, some way, but that's no individual responsibility of every single viewer to make this channel possible. But with that, Matthew, I understand that we have a pretty decent amount of questions that have come in right as we literally cusp 100,000 viewers, which is really crazy, in 52 minutes. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our super chat segment, our very short one this time, we have a $100 donation from Hokey Redneck, the channel legend, and thank you very much, Hokey, for that support. He said, "Go all night, and folks, help me out, keeping them on air." Oh man, that would be crazy. That would be like what, a 10-hour stream? That would be wild.
Oh my lord, I wouldn't be able to handle that, because Matthew and me actually today, for one of the few times that we've ever said this, we were both like, man, we cannot wait for Monday, because we are exhausted. Like this week has been an exhausting week, because the streams are going for like 4 hours straight. We get up, we've been working all day, every day this week. So that 60-hour a week kind of a time frame I give y'all for the amount of work we put into this channel each, throw that out the window. It's probably like 100 hours this week for both of us, like not combined each. So we are absolutely worn out at this point, but we love covering the news. This is what we were meant to do. We got to thank all of y'all so much once again for being here with us right now while we're covering that breaking news development. And I got to thank all of y'all as well for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all who enjoyed the channel, like you, Hokey Redneck, and supported the channel and helped us to keep this thing running, we wouldn't even be able to possibly be on air for a good while, like all night. Like you're wanting us to be Hokey Redneck. We kind of will be. It's just that I have to take an off-air moment for about an hour or two to be able to set up the next stream and then get to covering the Kursk offensive news, which is also huge today as well. I think people are starting to get a little tone deaf to that, though, because today, from what I can tell, the Ukrainians took at least another 200 prisoners in the Russian army, maybe 300 even. We're not getting an actual number on that at the moment. I'm just trying to get an idea out of the video and picture evidence we're getting. But it was a lot, and they captured loads of tanks as well on video. So they are doing wildly well, and we're still getting news that they're advancing, they're capturing more settlements. We're hearing regional administrations like in the Zaporizhzhia area, which is this area of Kursk, they are begging people to leave. They're begging people to evacuate because they're saying that the Ukrainian army is going to be bearing down on them incredibly soon, and it's very clear because they're already moving into that district of the Kursk Oblast. So we are getting loads of massive news, and I want to make sure that we are able to research that information enough that when we come on air, we can cover that as well as we just covered these major updates, these emergency updates that we just had a moment ago. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well, Hokey Redneck. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and jumping into our next super chat here, it goes to Hokey Redneck yet again, and he puts in a $50 donation this time. And thank you very much, Hokey, for the second support. He said, send it to the charity later and send one to the chat.
And I thank you so much once again for support, Hokey Redneck. We will send that 50 to the fundraiser later. Also, by the way, another thing I forgot to mention, everyone, is that I also support the nonprofits that we fundraise for. I usually throw in $100 every single week. But since Hokey Redneck threw in that 50 there, it will be 150 tonight. But still, I got to say a huge thanks to you once again for the support, Hokey Redneck. Thank you for always being here with the channel. Thank you for enjoying it and helping it to keep on running. And we will make sure to send it to the chat. And so, Matthew, what kind of question do we have from the live chat?
All right, and this question is going to go to Nemesis, who says, will this trigger Article 5 if the plant actually burns down in Zaporizhzhia?
That's a good question. We don't really know for certain. Article 5 is purely a defensive, well, the NATO charter is purely a defensive pact. It is never made for preemptive offensive actions, so you have to be attacked physically first for Article 5 to be invoked, and it has to be invoked laid under the guidelines of Article 4 and Article 6, which lay out the specific kind of instances where an Article 5 invocation could be brought forward. So going off of that, I'm not entirely sure if they would want to view this as a possible Article 5 invocation if a meltdown happened at the ZMPP. We saw back in the past during Chernobyl when the radiation flooded over Norway and also the UK, because the radiation from Chernobyl kind of went in a big semicircle over northern Europe. It went through Belarus, it went through the Baltics, and then it flowed over Sweden, Norway, which it was a NATO member at the time. Sweden and Finland were not, and the Baltics weren't either. And then it flowed over the UK. When it got to the UK, the radioactive cloud had dissipated a pretty decent bit, so the radioactivity wasn't that much, but they were still getting dusted pretty much in Britain by some radioactive fallout. So going off of that, I would say, based off of that instance, Article 5 wasn't even brought up as a discussion, so maybe it wouldn't be brought up now, but then again, at the same time, we weren't in an actual war with the Soviet Union at that time either, or we weren't even seeing a conflict with the Soviet Union in any meaningful area. The war in Afghanistan was going on, but that was largely an American-Soviet sort of a proxy war that was going on. It didn't really involve all of NATO, so NATO would have never been brought into that conversation. So I would say maybe, I wouldn't rule it out, but just based off of the historical precedent, I would doubt it a little bit, unless if it was clearly a deliberate act meant to cause some sort of form of nuclear terrorism against NATO countries. If that was the case, then we probably would see a reaction. But if it seems like it actually is a legitimate accident, we probably would not see any form of real physical reaction by NATO because of that. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. Very good question, by the way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Sarge, for that $20 support.
Hey!
He said, LSA, I can now say a mission success, and by the look of things, I'm glad to be out of Kherson. And it was worse than South Central LA, where I grew up in the 90s. And glad to be back with the LSA and reporting for duty as always, and LSA for life.
Hey, and welcome back, LSA Sergeant Figment. Glad to have you back, and I'm glad to hear the mission was a success and that you're safe. Kherson does look pretty rough. It's been flooded, it's been shelled. I mean, Kherson has gone through a beating recently. But it's good to know that you were able to get your family out of there and that you're safe and A-okay. And also, thank you for sharing some of the pictures you got in the meantime with me while you were traveling in and out, because it was incredibly cool to see that kind of stuff, and it's really cool to see where you went. I'm not going to give away where he was for operational security reasons, but still, it was incredibly cool. And I got to say, thank you so much once again for being a part of the Lee Spring Army, LSA Sergeant Figment. Thank you as well for appreciating this channel and supporting it and helping it to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Everyone give a big welcome back to LSA Sergeant Figment, because he really did get right on the front lines. He was in the city of Kherson. The Russians are right across the Dnieper River. He's probably one of the LSA members that I can think of at the moment that got the closest to the Russians outside of the few members we have in the Ukrainian armed forces. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on to our next one here, we have a $20 super chat from Purple Gerbil, also a channel legend, and thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, as well. They said, LSA forever, and take one from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and of course, LSA forever, Purple Gerbil, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and we will make sure to take one from the chat in honor of you, Purple Gerbil. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Voling, who says, what are your thoughts on a partisan attack on Moscow train? Have you heard?
Partisan attack on a Moscow train. I'm hoping that this isn't the train robbery story that
was
like a big thing.
Oh, no.
I have not heard of a, like, if you're talking about a partisan attack on railroad infrastructure, that actually happens a lot, but usually on railway signal boxes. That's one of the easiest targets for partisans to hit. It ends up causing a pretty decent amount of damage for a short while, so maybe I've heard about it because I see those a lot. Those end up becoming background noise, though, because they happen so much. So if you're talking about one of those, yes. If you're talking about the partisans hijacking a Russian train, I have never heard of that. Like those stories are complete fabrications. I'll explain where those come from really quickly in case y'all are like, well, where are they coming from? They're coming from pro-Ukraine YouTube channels that are dropping off in viewership, and they become really desperate to get any kind of views that they can. And so they come up with these BS stories, like they are absolute fabrications about how someone took a train, like robbed a train in Russia. And the way that they tell these stories, because I actually found some of them and watched them, they literally steal the entire plot of these stories from like a Wild West train robbery. Like the Ukrainians drive up to the train on a pickup truck, they hop over onto the locomotive with a gun, and they go up to the cab and they go, "Stop the damn train!" And then they stop the train and they take it over, and then I guess they just drive it around Russia forever, on the rails, because there's no way to get that train out of Russia. Like, they don't control, like, this isn't like the old movies back in the day when when you could pull a steam train up to like a switch in the track and flip the switch yourself. All the switches in Russia are automated. Someone is sitting in a control room somewhere in some major city, and they're flipping all of these switches for these trains throughout Russia, except for on minor sidings and stuff like that. Those are still manually flipped. But beyond that, there is no way that the train hijacking stories are ever true. Like, if you're talking about, did they hijack a train? Absolutely not. Did they blow up a railway signal box or something like that, or blow up some rails? Now, they have done that, and they've done that a lot. So I could tell you yes on that, but no on hijacking a train. I cannot, I'll tell you, I cannot stand the hijacking stories. Not because people, people ask about them. Like, no, it's fine to ask about them. It's better to ask about them and then be told that those stories are untrue. I hate them because I know the people who are putting those stories out, and I cannot stand how desperate they get for viewership and new subscribers and stuff, to the point that they would completely lie about something that's happening in the war just to try and get views, because it never happens. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that question incredibly well. Thank you so much once again, Purple Triple, for sponsoring one from the live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here is going to go to Charlie Hernandez, who puts in a 20 as well. And huge shout out to you, Charlie, for that support. He said, "Thanks, guys, and I love your content, and we'll be sending some very accurate intel and LSA."
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying the channel, and thank you for wanting to send some accurate intel, Charlie. We really do appreciate any accurate intel that we can find. We actually do have to have a little bit of a sifting job sometimes with some of the intel we get, because some people will send stuff and it's completely untrue. One of the ones that I think Matthew and me will remember the most recently was this one report that the Iranians were going to launch missiles at a specific time of day, and that those missiles would be crossing Jordan at a specific time. And we ran that stream that night thinking that that information must have been solid, and it was not solid at all. It didn't happen, and it's days later, and it still didn't happen. And so that was, once again, false information. A lot of people like to send false information for some reason. I don't know why. It's like, it's like we're going to find out you didn't have real information when it doesn't happen. It's like it's going to literally happen in like an hour or two or days. I don't know why people have that sometimes, but if you actually have video and picture evidence and other kinds of evidence that we can use, we would be so happy to have that. Because while there are bad sources of information like that, like the Trust Me Bros, there are a lot of people who also send forward video and picture evidence that we can actually use on air, or we can't use on air, but we can use in our intelligence gathering, and then get a better idea of what we're going to be talking about and what kind of news we actually have today. So I hope that it does address that fairly well, Charlie Hernandez. Now, I hope that you have some incredible intel for us, because we will probably be able to use that very well, at least as far as our analysis goes on stream. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And jumping into our next super chat, we have a $20 donation from Susan. And thank you very much, Susan, for that support. And it said, "Great to catch you live and take one from the chat."
And thank you so much for the support, Susan. Thank you for being happy to catch us live. This is probably a rare moment, Susan, because the next time we run a stream at this time, we don't even know when it will be, because our streams run every single night at 10 p.m. Eastern time like clockwork. Y'all can actually count on this channel always being live at the same time 6 days a week. Tomorrow, which is Monday, at least in our time zone, is the only day we take off from running a live stream. Every day we try and put out a short war summary video, and every other day of the week but Monday we put out a live stream literally at the exact same time every night, 10 p.m. Eastern time. That stream will go live. You can always count on that, unless if one of us is deathly sick or if we've been injured in some sort of a really, really bad way. Those times, y'all will not see a stream because we'll probably be incapacitated. But beyond that, you will always be able to count on a stream being here on air. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Susan. Thank you for being able to catch one live on our emergency broadcast here, and we will be able to make sure to take one from the chat in your honor, Susan. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one from the chat goes to Brian Bokelman, who says, what are the chances that the U.S. is going to get involved if Iran throws the first punch in Israel?
We are probably going to get involved in the defense of Israel, but we're probably not going to get involved in any preemptive or retaliatory offensive actions against Iran, because the United States government seems very against the idea of conducting any form of armed action anywhere in the world for any reason at this point. It seems as though really appeasement is really the way we're going at this moment. I can't really make too much of a comment on that, but I have a feeling that our actions in the Middle East will be entirely defensive and will never enter an offensive realm. So, yes, we will be there for the defense of Israel if Iran throws the first punch, but we are not going to be there for Israel when Israel decides to retaliate and counterattack the Iranians with their own airstrike on key Iranian sites. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. I thank you so much once again for the support, Susan, and sponsoring that live chat, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and this next super chat here goes to Charlie Hernandez yet again, and this time he throws in a $50 donation, and a huge shout out to Charlie for that massive support, and that's his third ever super chat on the stream. He said some support for the LSA.
And a huge thank you, Charlie Hernandez, for some support for the LSA. I gotta thank you so much, because support like yours does help this channel to keep on running, and I gotta say, thank you so much once again for the support. Thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you who support it, y'all are the people who make it possible for us to do this as a full-time job. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here on air and covering our nightly streams. And not only that, these emergency broadcasts like we're doing right now, because this is certainly not normal. And we're probably not going to be doing one of these again for an incredibly long time, unless if something crazy happens, like the Iranians fired at Israel, which may happen soon. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Thank you so much once again for support, Charlie Hernandez. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to SkipTracer007, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, SkipTracer, as well, who's a longtime channel legend, by the way. He said, thank you for reporting on Ukraine.
And thank you, SkipTracer, for enjoying our reporting on Ukraine. We put a lot of work and effort into this thing. That is for sure. I mean, without a doubt, like, this day today, doing this right now, this is a lot of effort, because we were actually kind of like sitting around a little bit today. Matthew put out a video. It's done incredibly well. It's pretty much gotten almost up to 300,000 views at this point, which is insane. It's crazy to think people are watching our channel like this these days. But we were sitting around and we were hearing that the cooling tower was on fire, and we were like, should we run a stream on this? And we were like, I don't know. Let's give it a little bit of time and see how it goes. And then it looked as though things might end up getting serious with that. And so we were like, if it is going to get serious, we want to make sure to beat everyone to the punch and tell y'all what's happening first. So if something does happen, y'all at least know what was leading up to it. It isn't thrown on y'all out of the blue. Like, oh, by the way, the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant, yeah, cooling tower just collapsed and it looks like it might be melting down. Like, we didn't want y'all to get the information right then. We wanted to make sure that y'all knew there is an ongoing fire, and it looks like there's a pretty precarious situation going on at the power plant. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for enjoying this channel for a very long time, SkipTracer. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Melinda Grifford Vaughn. He puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Melinda, for that support. She said, thanks for the hard work that you all do, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much, Melinda, for enjoying the hard work we do. Like I say, we put in a lot of effort into this thing, and I'm glad that we always do. We're always ahead of the game compared to our competitors on YouTube who also cover this news. Usually we get out the news before them, and usually it's a lot more detailed as well. And I'm glad to know that people really do see that and appreciate that. And I thank you so much once again for wanting us to take one from the chat, Melinda, because we will make sure to. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Uncovered Cube, who says, is this how Russia bombs Russia and then blames Ukraine?
I think that's kind of what Matthew and me were going for earlier. They probably were the ones that start the cooling tower fire, and then they're going to blame it on Ukraine, possibly to try and create some sort of a narrative in the future. If they were to do something to the Kursk nuclear power plant, they could blame that on Ukraine instead of themselves. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. I thank you so much once again for support, Melinda, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a massive $50 donation from Trev P. And thank you very much, Trev, for that support. That's his first ever Super Chat on the stream. We appreciate that very much. He said, thank you all for the hard work and effort that you do to bring these live breaking news updates and also the daily updates of what's going on around the world, and especially with Ukraine. And long live the LSA and Slav Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, Trev P. Your first Super Chat ever from Canada. Pretty cool, actually. Pretty cool. We have a lot of Canadian viewers. But I got to thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel and supporting it and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, and actually your first support ever, and if it wasn't for folks like you who enjoyed this channel enough to support us one time or multiple times like some people have, we wouldn't be able to make this stream possible every day, and we wouldn't be able to give these emergency breaking news broadcasts like we are right now, which happen whenever breaking news happens. We wouldn't be able to run our nightly streams. We wouldn't be able to put out our daily short war summaries. We wouldn't be able to do any of that. And I've got to say, a huge thanks to you once again for enjoying what we do, covering world news and also specifically Ukraine news. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, long live the LSA, and Slav Ukraini. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Octanus, who puts in a $12 donation, and thank you very much, Octanus, as well. And also, I don't see any comment to address, but of course, we appreciate that support, and it keeps the lights on and also the work flowing, and we appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge thanks to you as well, Octanus. I got to thank you for the support. You didn't throw in a comment to your Super Chat, but the support does help us to keep this thing rolling, and we thank you greatly for that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Born in Ukraine for putting in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Born in Ukraine, for that support as well.
Hey!
They said thank you for your time and hard work, and much appreciated. And LSA, Slav Ukraine, and Hiram Slava.
Hey, thank you so much for enjoying the hard work, and thank you for supporting it and helping to keep on running. And of course, long live the LSA, Slav Ukraini, and Hiram Slava. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, shout out to Lord Lathos LSA, who put in a 10 and said, long live the LSA and take a chat.
And thank you for the support, Lord Lathos, and long live the LSA. The LSA will never die, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one is going to go to Kuchulian343, who said, could this be a Russian sabotage in a desperate bid to slow the Ukrainians?
It could be. We're believing that it may be that a little bit, or it may be meant as some sort of an ominous warning about what they're going to do if the Ukrainians end up succeeding too well in Kursk. One or the other. We're kind of thinking that it probably is directly related to that, though, for sure. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, Lord Lathos. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, big shout out to Dixie LaFleur for putting in a $10 donation, along with CS8 for also putting in a 10, and then we had one from Alan Orchard as well. So a huge shout out to Dixie, CS8, as well as Alan for each putting in a $10 donation, and we appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to say, a huge thanks to Dixie LaFleur, CS8, not CS8s, and Alan Orchard for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. All three of y'all threw support to this channel, but y'all didn't throw in any comments. The support is still greatly appreciated, though, and I gotta thank all of y'all once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be on air right now, making this channel possible and getting to cover the news that we cover every single day. And so with that, I hope that does address it incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Rangers Rule, who puts in a $10 donation and says, guys, over the last several days, Russia was indicating something will happen, and Putin has his back up against the wall and will do anything to survive. And do you think I'm on track to the situation?
I would say, let's see, I think you're on track with that situation, Rangers Rule. I had to make sure to read that again. I think Putin really is getting desperate at this point. The Ukrainians are clearly showing that the border area has collapsed right now with the incursions into Belgorod and the major offensive in Kursk. I think it's very clear that the Russians are actually on their last dying legs in as far as trying to keep this war alive, and it looks like it may actually be backfiring and it may reverse into Russia at this point. So going off of that, I would have to say he's probably trying to find any way to survive, and this may be a warning that they're about to start finding those ways to survive very soon. And so with that, I thank you once again for support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Charlie Hernandez, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much as well, Charlie. He said, I love you guys, and great content, and I meant LSA strong, and LOL, dang typos.
And I gotta say, Thank you so much for the support, Charlie Hernandez. And it is perfectly fine to put in LFA here and there. LSA is the Least Spring Army. That's the community of the Enforcer channel. But hey, typos happen. I put typos into our intros, into our descriptions all the time. There's no autocorrect in OBS, so I never even get to see the typos until someone tells us about it, because they're like, hey, there's a typo, and I'm like, damn, I didn't even notice it. But still, thank you so much once again for the kind words, Charlie Hernandez. Thank you for the support, and thank you for saying that we have some great content. We try our best. And so with that, of course, long live the LSA. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, really quickly, I'm seeing some people coming in, and they're going, oh, I'm here for the news, and oh, I'm getting a super chats. Well, let me tell y'all something. We just got done covering the news about 20 minutes ago. Like, the entire first hour of the show is the news. So if y'all want to hear what's going on, y'all need to rewind to the beginning of the stream, and then you will see the news. Like, we covered it all. We talked about it all. But I can't keep doing that because we have a lot of people who are making the stream possible, which are the super chatters. Like, this stream is ad-free, sponsor-free, and no one owes a dime to it. But this channel, and me and Enforcer Matt, we make a living doing this as a job, and the only way that we can do that is through super chatters. And so we have to thank them for their support, because they are the only people who make this channel possible for every single person who's watching right now. Everyone who was here a minute ago to hear the news was hearing the news because we were able to pay our bills, keep the lights on, and be able to keep on running this channel thanks to the super chatters and the folks who support this channel. And so we want to make sure to give them a huge amount of thanks and appreciation, because they're the only thing that actually makes this channel possible for us to do, because, you know, living ain't cheap and it's not free either. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well for folks who are coming in right now. If you're looking for the news, this is the question segment. The news was about an hour ago, so just rewind to the beginning of the stream and start watching from there, and that will be the news. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Charlie Hernandez yet again, and he puts in a 10 once more. And thank you very much, Charlie, for the third support of the day.
Hey!
And he says, LOL, I keep trying to type LSA, but the dang typos. And Viva LSA.
And long live the Light Spring Army, Charlie Hernandez. And it's A-okay with the typos. I'll tell you that. It's A-okay with them. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Barbarist, I believe it's said. Hopefully I'm not butchering your name. And they put in a $10 donation. And thank you very much for that support as well. They said, do we have any idea what the cause of the fire is? And thank you for your time.
We actually do not know all too well. We have heard that from the Ukrainians it's a tire fire. From the Russians, they say it's some kind of a artillery explosion from the Ukrainians to start a fire. And then from the IAEA, they said there were some unknown explosions that then started the fire. So everyone has a different story to this at the moment. We don't know which one's really true. To be honest, I'm going with some kind of a Russian explosion around the area. Probably set the wooden panels inside of the cooling tower that pretty much acts as the radiator. Those are probably on fire right now, and that's what we're seeing. That would be my honest opinion, but I could be wrong, because we're working with a lot of preliminary information, and preliminary information isn't always correct or good for that matter. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to James Opp, who puts in a $10 donation. He says, I called this late, but I heard that it's tires burning black smoke and the cooling towers are not running, or you'd see steam. And he said they convert steam back into water, and the fire should have little risk to the plant.
Thank you for the support, James Opp. And from what we know, the reactors largely are turned off, but we still understand that water has to be circulated through the entire system for the reactors, because they are still generating a residual amount of heat, meaning that they have to keep water flowing in and out of the reactors, and that means that eventually the cooling towers will be used even in a minimal capacity, at least from our understanding. And that understanding isn't entirely perfect. Of course, we're not nuclear physicists. I'm a history major. Matthew's a political science major, so nuclear technology isn't exactly our strong suit, but that's what we're understanding at the moment. It has very little risk to the reactors currently, but overall, in the big picture of the plant, it could end up posing a risk. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, and we're on to the next one.
And this super chat right here is going to go to Katie105, who puts in a 10, and also KPH5225, who put in a 6, and also we had a 5 from LSA Sergeant Figment. And sadly, no comments to address on these either, but huge shout out to all three of you for that support. And Enforcer, what say ya?
And of course, a huge shout out to all three of y'all for the support: KD105, KBH5225, and LSA Sergeant Figment. Y'all are the folks who helped to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. And I got to give a huge thanks to y'all once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we had the first ever super chat from Yeti Stew, who puts in a massive $50 donation, and a huge shout out to you for that massive support, first time ever. We appreciate that very much. And they said, thanks for the news.
And thank you so much for enjoying the news, Yeti Stew. That's a very interesting sounding stew right there. I want to try that one day, but beyond that, thank you so much once again for support, and thank you for enjoying our news. Thank you for supporting the channel for the first time ever as well, by the way. That's been happening a lot lately, like a lot of first super chatters, which is really wild because super chatters are very hard to come by. It's kind of weird actually. Like super chatters, like you'll get like a new person, a first super chatter, usually like every week you'll get like one. And so we're always like, look, it's the first super chatter. But recently we've been getting new super chatters in multiples of them every day. But I still have to thank you massively for the support, Yeti Stew. Thank you for enjoying our news, and thank you for enjoying it enough that you want to support it and help us to be able to keep doing this as our job so that way we can keep covering the news. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Barbara Seth once again, who puts in another 10 and says, do we have any idea of what the cause of the fire is? And thanks for your time.
At the moment, we don't really have an exact cause. We understand that it's most likely a fire created by rubber tires, which is one of the running theories, or it's a fire of the wooden slats inside the cooling tower that pretty much serve as the cooling tower's radiator for the water that passes through it when it's fully operational. It's one or the other. We're not entirely sure at the moment because the story that we're getting is very, very young. I mean, there's 3 different versions of it at the moment, and we don't have enough proof or evidence at all right now to be able to confirm one or the other. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And let's see here. Our next super chat is going to be going to a Blaze Gamer, who puts in a 5 and says, I've been watching you guys since Prigozhin's stunt. That's about a year ago, so a very long time viewer here. He said, also funny and entertaining. And I can't usually watch since I'm live in... I'm a Eurobro, and thank you for all you do.
And thank you for the support, Blaze Gamer. And that's really cool to hear that you've been watching ever since about a year and a few months ago. That's pretty cool to hear, actually. I got to thank you so much for being around for a while. I also hate to hear that you're in Europe because usually European viewers have the hardest time watching the show because when it goes live at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, our time, it's usually 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, or 5 o'clock in the morning, depending on which time zone you're in Europe. For all of y'all. So y'all are like at the break of dawn if y'all are wanting to watch this show live normally. But still, thank you so much once again for support. Thank you for being here with this channel tonight, and thank you for enjoying it, and thank you for really appreciating everything we do. We try our best. This stream was a really short one, but we wanted to make sure to get all that breaking news out to y'all as quickly as we could. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Irish Ed, who puts in a $5 donation and says, LSA, it's Irish Ed here. And it's Irish Ed once again. He said, as a TMI child, he said, 3 blocks away from TMI, this is burning inside. He said, if you actually look closer to base, you can see the flames.
And I thank you for the support, Irish Ed, and really cool to hear that you lived near 3 Mile Island, where a nuclear disaster actually happened in America. It was actually the most severe one. And 3 Mile Island is right here in Pennsylvania. Y'all want to know where it is specifically? It's way up in the middle of Pennsylvania. It's near York and Lancaster. But still, let me show y'all this. Oh yeah, by the way, up here, here's Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and here's the airport, the capital city airport. What's cool about that is that if you're flying into Harrisburg International Airport or Capital City Airport, you actually see 3 Mile Island on your approach. And you can actually see the cooling towers out there still. They're somewhat similar to the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant ones. And that is fairly true. The fire is inside. We did point that out a little bit earlier. And it looks as though it may be the wooden slats, or maybe it is the actual tire fire, although I find the whole tire fire concept a little bit odd. I'm not going to completely discount it. It's just that it's a weird story. But with that, I hope that does address that. at least the best we can, at least in our opinion. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And Matthew, I just saw something in the chat. Apparently someone's getting a little angry. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo. And now they're going to start sending their people over.
Yeah, so far it's just one though, so just one stranger, one random one.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, that's probably the floodgate opening right there. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it later. But anyways, someone else said, the Enforcer, are you pro-Ukrainian or pro-Russian? I'm neither. I'm pro-Western, and because I'm pro-Western and I look out for American and Western interests, it ends up that I'm pro-Ukrainian because advancing Ukraine's interest is actually inherent into Western and American interests because they are dealing with an enemy of the United States, and they are also expanding our sphere of influence and also improving our strategic situation inside of Russia. Well, not really inside of Russia, but really within Eastern Europe and also within Russia if a conventional war was to break out. So I hope that kind of gives you a good idea of where this channel stands, because we don't have any biases. We don't take a political bias or any other kinds of biases on this channel, except for that one in which this is a pro-Western channel. That doesn't mean that we are blind, like unlike other channels that blindly support Ukraine, like, you know, like Ukraine could do something a little bit weird and, you know, people in the West would go, oh, that's kind of weird. But then you're so pro-Ukrainian, everything that Ukraine does is perfect and you can never critique any of it, and they're just amazing and they're great and they're heckin' chunker wow. We don't do that on this channel. We will disagree with the Ukrainians sometimes, like the involvement in relations that they're trying to grow with the communist Chinese. We make it very clear on this channel that we're openly against that because that is inherently against Western interests, and therefore that is not within our interests. So that's kind of how we run it here on this channel. It's a pro-Western channel. That's why we're also pro-Israel and pro-Taiwan as well, is because all three of those and furthering those are within Western interests overall. So I hope that does explain that fairly well about how this channel runs, because you can always count on us to keep it objective and neutral as far as a political approach goes. We don't even talk about politics on this channel. That's a rule. We just keep it pro-Western in the big picture, and that's it. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this super chat goes to Nova Stardust, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Nova, for the support. They said to take one from the chat. And sadly, I can't watch late on Sunday nights, but I'm proud to say that the LSA keeps smashing it in the fundraising, and you all rock. And here's a 10 for the Biggie Bag Fund.
Hey, and thanks so much for the support for the Biggie Bag Fund, straight from Detroit. And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hate to hear that you can't watch the Sunday night fundraisers. That's sad, but and still, we will make sure to be there in your honor. Actually, I'm going to add your 10 to the Sunday night fundraiser total for what I'm throwing in. So now, including Hokey Rednecks, is going to be $160 that I throw in tonight instead of just $100. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for supporting the Biggie Bag Fund. And we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this live chat question right here goes to Eugene Minton, who says, could you do an infomercial on the cooling towers and maintenance that could lead to situations like this if neglected?
It could possibly lead to a situation like this, but it's really hard to think of one, because to set fire to all of the wooden panels inside of the cooling tower, you would have to do something to set them on fire. Like those things aren't just going to spontaneously combust. It takes a pretty decent amount of temperature to set a wood panel on fire, especially the ones that are using the cooling tower like that, because they're probably treated a certain way that would make their burn temperature even higher, really, because some of those wooden tiles would almost be fireproof at this point. So I would have to say maybe that's the case, but I'm feeling that's a little unlikely. This was probably a deliberate action and not one of some form of negligence. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that support as well. And she said, I'm one of those very special 10%ers who is female. And I do think that we are more than 10% in the live chat. And thanks for putting in more than 100 into this channel and to your subscribers.
And thank you so much for appreciating that, Margaret Hemsley. And I would have to say, I feel like women make up far more than 10% of this channel. I don't, but like the stats show different. Like the stats show that y'all only make up about 8.7% of this channel at this point. Like that is weird, because it used to actually be like close to 11. It was like 10.8, and then it went down to 10, and now it's down all the way to 8.7. I feel though, I don't know what it is. I feel though that the women viewers of this channel are more active in proportion to their numbers than male viewers, because it almost seems like our live chat's half and half. And it also seems like in terms of live chats and super chatters, it's also divided almost down the middle, half and half as well there. So I guess the women make up a small part of the population, but make up like half of the engagement on the stream. Like, I think that's actually how it works, because that generally is what I see as well, Margaret Hemsley. And so that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible, and thank you so much for enjoying our dedication and our effort. But before we move on to the next one, because there are so many people throwing in super chats, it's an insanely high amount. I'm actually going to have to, yeah, and I have to make sure to get to work on the next stream, which is going to be happening in like 25 minutes. We're going to have to enact a super chat cutoff from this point forward. If you want to throw in a super chat, I thank you so much for enjoying this channel enough. You will want to support it and help it to keep on running. But we will not be able to accept super chats beyond this point. We could, it's just that we can't read them. And when y'all throw in super chats, we have to read all of them, because I want to make sure that y'all get y'all's moment of thanks and appreciation from both Matthew and me. And y'all know that we actually do appreciate y'all and thank y'all greatly for supporting the channel and helping it to keep on running. So from this point forward, beyond Ambi-Pambi's super chat that just came in, we will not be able to take any more super chats at this point. We're going to be reading the ones we have, and then we're going to be rounding out this stream and getting ready for the next one. Also, if you for some reason don't want to support a Sunday fundraiser, I don't know why, but if you don't want to and you just want to support this channel, you can come back on Tuesday, because that's the next time we'll be running a live stream, and you can throw in a super chat there. But the Sunday fundraiser, all of the money that's thrown in tonight, those are all going to be donations to a nonprofit. None of that, not a single cent of that, ends up going to us. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, since it just came in like probably right after we said it, Trister1 put in a $50 donation. Massive support, by the way. He said, just to clog your super chat channel. I'm telling you what, Trister1's clogging it up. Stop it.
Man, he's
just
clogging
joking,
it up.
Thank you very much.
He's clogging it up. We're legitimately running out of time. It's like making me panic now. But still, thank you so much for the massive support, Trister1. It is folks like you who helped make this thing possible and help it to keep on running. And thank you for clogging it up. Because while we want to make sure we get to everyone, the support is greatly appreciated, because it is how we make a living doing this thing. Other YouTubers want to sit there and make it sound like that isn't the case. Like, for some reason, they don't do this as a job. We do this as a job. I'm going to be completely transparent with y'all. This is our full-time job, running a YouTube channel. And I thank all of y'all, including you, Trister, for supporting it and helping you keep on running, because if it wasn't for y'all, this couldn't be our job. It financially would not be possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Ryzen 8. And he says, I like a big caboose. And I cannot lie. So he said, thanks for your live streams, and I watch when I can, and your 10 to 12 minute recap vids, some of the most informative on YouTube, in my humble opinion.
And thank you so much for saying that, Ryzen 8, because there are a lot of people out there who put out those kinds of videos, and they are absolute garbo. And like, you don't lie, they are just, like, I don't even know what the hell that's supposed to be. It's like, if I wanted to read a news article, I could do it without watching you. Like, I can read, I'm literate. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the kind words. Thank you for supporting the channel and helping this thing to keep on running. And thank you for the kind words as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to John McClain, who throws in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, John, as well. He said pew pew.
And pew pew. Thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who helped to make this thing possible. And I hope we were able to address that incredibly well. John McClain. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, by the way, I just realized I had a typo in my announcement I put out. I said it super heats instead of super chat, so I'll have to fix that in just a second. But anyways, moving on here to our next super chat, we have a $10 donation from James Opp. He said, I worked with cooling towers in refineries, and they are 7 inches of concrete, and the radiators are normally in the walls, and there should be no wood, and water wood equals rot, and would not worry much about it.
And thank you for the support, James Opp, and thank you for throwing in a little bit more information about them coolant towers and what it could be. Maybe it's not, but I did see earlier that it looked like there were wooden panels in there in that one, and it is Soviet, so maybe it's a little bit, maybe a little quirky, as Doug DeMuro would call it, but still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. Also, while it is the super chat cutoff and we're not reading new super chats off, big shout out to the Boulder. They threw in a $10 super chat. It's their first super chat ever to the channel. Big thanks to you once again. And also, big shout out to Hokey Redneck. I did see that, and that means that the total for the fundraiser tonight for what I'm throwing into the nonprofit will be $210. But once again, I don't want people throwing in super chats a lot and saying put this into the fundraiser. Like, that's nice and neat and all, but YouTube doesn't give us $50. Like, if you throw in a $50 super chat, we're getting like 30 something dollars. And so then I have to throw in 50, and YouTube takes like $13 of your super chat, and I still have to throw that in. So if people did that for thousands of dollars worth of super chats, we would end up going broke, and we wouldn't be able to honor every single one of those. But I will be honoring those because it is a very small number of them. So the amount I'll be throwing in will be $210 tonight instead of $160. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to, let's see here, a big shout out to Ambi Pambi, who put in a $10 donation and did not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Ambi Pambi, for that support and helping to keep the work running, and we appreciate it. We also had a 10 from Rich Brotherton, who said, thanks for keeping us up to date and a place where we can discuss it.
And thank you so much for the support, Rich Brotherton. And thank you so much for enjoying us keeping everyone up to date. And thank you for really liking the place that everyone has to discuss. It's probably one of the most civil places on YouTube I've seen so far. And I'm glad that we keep it that way. And so with that, big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jerome Van Gastel, who puts in a 6 and says that Gerasimov was sacked today and replaced by the head of KGB. Wait a minute, when did this happen?
I didn't hear about it, and also the KGB doesn't exist anymore. It's the FSB. So I would have to say, I thank you so much for the support. I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit more, but I have not heard of any reports of that today at all, to be entirely honest. So, I'll have to look into that, but I haven't heard anything to corroborate that story yet. And so with that, thank you for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Trigger, who puts in a 5 and says, thank you for giving us all the news as it happens, and long live the LSA.
And thank you so much for enjoying that, Trigger. Thank you for the support and helping the channel keep on running. And thank you for enjoying us covering the news as it does happen. And of course, long live the LSA, and the LSA will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, also known as Sarge. He puts in a 5 again and says, just so you know, I was under artillery shelling while in Kherson at times, and it was completely different than raiding tunnels in Gaza and scary Shiznit.
Shiznit. And I gotta thank you for the support. That's actually really crazy to hear. Like, Kherson is shelled a pretty good bit. Interestingly enough, the Russians are always lobbing a shot over there every once in a while. It happened so much, it ended up turning into white noise for us on the channel, so we stopped reporting on it because it's like a fact of life down there at this point. But that actually is the reason why I was telling you, be safe down there. Like, get in there and leave immediately once you get there, because it is dangerous down in Kherson. It's a very, very dangerous place. But I would have to say it probably is incredibly scary, because unlike the guys, Hamas down in the Gaza Strip, which maybe has some light support, maybe mortars, the Russians are lobbing actual heavy artillery into Kherson, so really, really kind of a different experience. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next ones here go to Raj Kapoor, who put in a 5, along with Daniel Leduc, who put in a 5 as well. And thank you very much, Raj, who's a longtime channel legend, for putting in that $5 support. And also a huge shout out to you, Daniel, as well, for supporting that channel and our work. And we appreciate it very much. And our next one here is going to go to LSA Sergeant Figment yet again, and he puts in another 5. He said, okay, my last one for the night, LOL. And he said, the U.S. won't go to war during the election cycle. Just a thought.
That would be an interesting thought. Sometimes they actually do, though, because going into a war during an election cycle, actually, I can't get into that a lot because that's a political thing at that point. I would have to bring up political examples, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do. It's kind of like a flip of the coin kind of thing, depending on the situation here in America. But I can't get on into that more because it's a really political thing. If I talk about it like that, it's political about both sides, but people wouldn't like hearing it, so I have to avoid talking about it. But still, thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that the best I can, at least given the circumstances, LSA Sergeant Figment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Shane, who puts in a 5. He says, there's a war coming, and nukes cannot be involved, but China, Russia, and Iran are pushing that this will happen.
And I thank you for the support, Shane. I'm not entirely sure a world war will happen. It's really close to it, but I'm not really sure. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat here is going to go to your friendly neighborhood weenie dog, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much. They said that this war is increasing the prices of tortillas in Mexico. Please end it soon. Mexican here.
Really? I didn't know that. Well, actually, you know what? That would make sense considering that I believe that y'all were one of the people who bought grain from Ukraine. So that actually is interesting. I didn't know that because it really hasn't affected, from what I can tell, the wheat prices in America, because American wheat is usually grown in America, and so it's a really insulated kind of a agricultural market here, because most of the food that is consumed in America is grown in America, unlike other places in the world. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another one from Sarge, who puts in a $2 donation and says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And that is an order. Hit that like button if you can. We've gotten up to 5,500 likes, which is pretty wild. And if you can hit it a little bit more, we would be greatly appreciative, folks. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dean London, who puts in a 2 and says, potassium iodine ordered.
And Dean London, you're getting ready, and I got to thank you for the support. I hope you are getting ready. I hope you're well prepared. It's not like anything crazy is going to happen. Hopefully not. But still better to be safe than sorry, you know. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support as always. And they said that line sure is moving east quickly. And they said choice words to a particular somebody who's not liked in the pro-Ukraine community.
He's apparently not liked by the U.S. federal government either. But beyond that, I gotta say, that line really is moving east quickly. I mean, damn, look at them go. But still, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also a big shout out to Wood Duck, who put in a $5 Canadian. And thank you very much. Sadly, we can't address it, though, due to the time constraints, because we have several more to go. But this one right here goes to Sporty860, who puts in a $2 donation and says, you guys are my first.
Hey, and thank you so much for your support, Sporty860, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for us being your first. And so with that, thank you once again. We are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 2 and says, how's Alan doing? Is he working on that boiler in LSA?
And, wow, look at that boiler. But beyond that,
boiler.
Alan's doing well. Alan's still on vacation a little bit because I'm having to get my voice back into shape. Many of y'all may be able to tell I'm not really fluctuating it that much like I normally do. And also, I'm not doing like a whole bunch of crazy voices or high-pitched sounds or anything like that because I'm trying to make sure to get my neck muscles back in order. So for now, he's still on vacation, but hopefully by Tuesday, he will be back out and at it again. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Jaya Turner, who puts in a 2 and said, I missed lots recently due to my move, but keep it up.
And hey, and thank you so much for enjoying the channel and wanting us to keep it up. And I hope that your move has gone well. And I hope that everything was moved perfectly and there were no dings and scratches on it, because for some reason, there's always dings and scratches on our stuff whenever we move. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Clam Jansen, who puts in a $2 donation and said, what in the heckin' fudge? I just woke up.
And I mean, what in the heck is fudge? I mean, hopefully it doesn't turn out being a big issue, but it sounds as though everyone is turning it into a bit of a big issue. So we thought we would get out there and tell y'all about it. So that way, if it isn't a big issue, y'all at least know it happened. And if it wasn't a big issue, well, if it turns into a big issue, at least y'all know it was going to happen. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Mike G, who puts in a $2 donation and says, I'm from Detroit, come visit.
You forgot the EMF that you put in there.
I left that part out.
Yeah, I mean, I would visit Detroit, but the problem is that it's safer to be deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan than it is to go to Detroit. I'm just kidding. It's actually Chicago that's the case with nowadays. But back when that stat came out, like in the late 2000s and early 2010s, it was actually about Detroit. But Detroit's actually gotten a lot calmed down these days because the city has declined in population so much. It's almost like the fall of Rome, because it went from like 1.1 million people to only having about 300,000. So the city of Detroit is actually about the same size as our hometown of Montgomery, Alabama, which is really, really wild to think about now, because it's just so much ruin up there. You know, like there's no one living out there anymore in most of the city. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for support, Mike G, and helping this channel keep on running. Also, big shout out to Strong River Flats, threw in their third super chat ever. It was past the cutoff, so sadly we couldn't read it. And also, there was another super chat from Wood Duck, and I'm just going to quickly read this since we have just a little bit of time. Wood Duck said, "Just got here. Thank you for your first super chat ever, by the way, Wood Duck. Will you cover the strikes on Israel that happened an hour ago in your evening stream?" We probably will end up covering that because we are covering really world news at this point, so that probably will end up making it into the news cycle, but it will probably be an annotated footnote, considering that there isn't heavy action going on in the area and it's more like light skirmishes on the border. It will probably be a footnote, but most likely yes. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And now we have just enough time to answer the Morse code decoders of the stream and a couple of live chats, maybe 3 of them, and then we're going to be rounding it. Oh, actually, damn, it looks like we covered every single live chat under the sun.
Yep.
According to, yeah.
We are fresh out. We are fresh out of live chats as we speak. We covered all of them during the super chat segment, so we knocked them out.
Dang. Oh, well, all right. Well, I guess we are on to the Morse code decoders of the stream. We answered every single live chat there was, funnily enough. And then we're going to be rounding out this stream and getting ready for the next one, which will be at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And so, Matthew, what do the Morse code decoders have for us tonight?
All right, and also shout out to Eric S, by the way. You threw in a 5, and we appreciate that very much. And tonight we had the Morse code decoders, Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, and David Millsaps. And they said that the LSA core Morse code decipher says, "That thing be burning, 3.7 rocking, not great, not terrible, long live the LSA."
And that is the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct on the 900th day of the war and the first stream of today. Because now, after that Morse code message, we have to round out this stream, and I immediately have to start working on the next one. So, yippee! Like, we are having a busy day today. But still, a huge thanks to everyone who's joined us so far. It's been an absolutely crazy stream, because over the course of just a mere hour and 47 minutes, which is one of the shortest streams we've actually run in a very long time, we've gotten about 160,000 views on the stream, and about 17,000 people joined us at the peak to watch. It's been one hell of a week for this channel. I've never seen this channel get this kind of viewership on live streams and on our videos. It's going absolutely crazy everywhere, and I've got to give you all a huge thanks. We are absolutely humbled and honored to be the folks that are able to tell you all about the news that's happening all around the world, about what's going on at places like the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant, what's going on with the offensive in Kursk, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on all the way over there in the Far East and East Asia. We get to tell you all about every single thing that's going on, and I've got to say, that is why we work so hard running this channel. That is why we are here right now, outside of our scheduled stream time, running this breaking news segment, and we've been doing that for about 2 hours now, is because we absolutely are honored by the position that many of y'all have bestowed upon us with y'all's trust, and we find it to be our duty to make sure to inform y'all of all of the breaking news that we can find that is going on anywhere in the world, whether it be in Ukraine, the Middle East, in Asia, or even here in the United States in some situations, like with Venezuela. I gotta thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see y'all all in literally just a few hours again when we finally run our 10 p.m. Eastern Time stream tonight, which is also going to be our Sunday night fundraiser. So make sure to show up so that way you can support the Sunday night fundraiser we have lined up for all of y'all. It's going to be a really good one. It's probably going to be a classic, so just make sure to be ready for that, and I cannot wait to see the Leaf Spring Army blow past another fundraising goal. But with that, of course, we will see y'all all in just a few hours, and of course, long live the Leaf Spring Army, and the Leaf Spring Army will never die.
And once again, thank you all for another great short stream, that is, on the emergency broadcast here about the Zaporizhzhia plant. And with that, we'll see you all tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern for the fundraiser stream. And be sure to join us then, if I can get that out. And thank you all once again for another great stream. But with that, we'll see you all later, and bye-bye for now.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.